Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's installation of, or this week's installment of Living in Multipotentiality. And today we're going to focus on our favorite resources. And my name is Marianne Hutchings. I can be found on Twitter at Luscious Tech. And this is my illustrious co-host, Onkarjot Singh, and you can find him on Twitter at Global Multipods. So today we thought we would dive into the deep dives that we do as multipotentialites. And when we are starting to go down the road of a new topic or something that we're really passionate about, and where do we go to find the information that we need to become really proficient or to develop the depth of knowledge that we're seeking? So OJ, how about let's start with maybe some of the blogs or websites, resources, books, people you talk to. What comes to mind for you when you first start going down the path of a new subject? What do you like to do first?
Okay, very good question. The first thing that comes to my mind is the knowledge. So if I know that I'll be taking over this path, knowledge is the base of everything that we do, because unless until if you don't have knowledge, you cannot excel. I put a lot of emphasis on knowledge by listening to YouTube videos that talks on that specific interest area, and then what works beneath it, how it works, where it is coming from, and then gives me a lot of learning. Then the second thing I keep in mind every time when I'm about to start a new project, and be open-minded and a self-starter, because being open-minded gives you a lot of opportunities to accept what is coming from others, what is coming from the cosmos. So this gives me the idea, time to think and adjust in that particular environment. So I have the list in front of me, so I'll just go with it. So then I also understand that I might fail, because failure is part and parcel of everything that we do. Even you're proficient and you're specialist, people do fail. So accept that your first time success won't work. So it is hit and trial method, because you're not doing it from the last several years. So expect that uncertainties will be there, and there will be failures, but you have to keep faith in yourself and how you learn and how you grow. So to make sure that I have strong faith in myself, what I do, so what I read a lot of books, maybe spiritual books, maybe autobiographies of people who have failed in their life, particularly like people like Michael Jordan, Abraham Lincoln, Oprah, so who have failed and then came across that bridge to come forward, because something worked for them and it can work for you. Then I also try, if I'm in a job, I try to gain my trust of my colleagues first of all. So I try to connect with them, because they are the people who have been there from a long time, and who will, once they have built their trust, they will share their each and every learning to them with their open heart. And this is your whole kind of precious, valuable knowledge corner that you have to get from others, because people do not open up. Some people do not open, some people open. It depends how your colleagues are. But if you gain your trust, the natural tendency is people will help you to grow. So they will share their knowledge, they'll share that this works and that does not work, you should read that books. So then I go back to my internet library and get those books, and then keep my ones in my this thing in my store. So next, I would say observe others. Observing is a skill which not many people have it, but yet if it can be developed through concentration and meditation, and if you learn how to observe, there are chances that you will fail less, because when you observe and then you understand how the person works, you will most likely follow his or her path, how they are doing it. And then last not the least, to be patient and consistent. Even if you fail, the bar is here, so you have to be consistent. Then you raise the bar one step at a time, and do not try to do too many things in a very less time, because your mind is now working in a high RPM mode. Then you have to take just one step. These are few things which I think resources which I can think of, which works for me. It may not work for you, may work for you, and something else which might come up, which may work for you. For example, some people are good at taking risks. I'm not. I take very cautious steps towards learning something new, and then Some people spend heavy amounts in bringing, for example, if I'm interested in music, some people just go and buy a high-end stuff. For example, some other people I've seen, if they are good, if they want to do some astronomy, they will buy a high-end telescope. Yet they are not scientists or astronomers, so they have to understand that you have to go step by step. So some people waste a lot of resources. So I mean to say, some people waste a lot of resources, and then they realize, okay, this is not up to what I should do. I should look for, should have been I bought some basic model of the camera or a telescope or a guitar. So spend wisely because you are the baby in that particular field. So as the time progresses, then you invest in yourself, you invest in your resources, and then these are the factors which I think which come to my mind to learn something, a lot of things. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, I'm just sending out a quick tweet with the last 30 seconds, a last 30-second clip. The thing that I really enjoy about what you just said is that you acknowledge right from the very start that you may fail. You may fail when you learn something new, but even in failing to try something and you realize that no, maybe this isn't going to be my thing. Maybe this isn't the best use of my time or skills. When you make that distinction for yourself, you still learn something along the way, and that you talk about being consistent and, to be kind to yourself as well. And I think people are innately very hard on themselves. They're their own worst critics. I think most people will agree with that. I know I certainly am. But one of the things that is the most fascinating is when you start to see an evolution. I mean, and I get to witness this every day with my daughter. And of course, this is something that I find truly remarkable. So, often on the easel behind me, people will see that I've got, that I have some kind of artwork on there, and no, it's not my own, it's my 8-year-old's. And if I look at what it is that she has accomplished in her short life, but I mean, children are like that. They're sponges, and the amount of neural pathways and connections that they make in the early stages of life, it's truly something to behold and to be a witness to something like that. I mean, if I have a look, okay, so, for me, I look at this and I go, all right, it's very interesting. It's very bold. And, and
it's bright.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about her paintings, after she's started something and, we'll go out for the day. And I said, if you want, sometimes you find that you have to go back and you need to add to something. And other times you will come back and you'll look at it and you'll just be, it's just perfect. And she said about that painting, she goes, Mommy, I think that one is just perfect. I painted it for Grandmama and I think she's going to love it. So we're gonna give it to my mom. My mom is also a painter, and she is not currently painting. She's having a break in her life from that. But I talk with her. So she's one of my trusted resources on something like artwork. And when I ask for questions, I'm asking for myself, and I'm also asking for my daughter, because I want to try and facilitate that learning curve where someone who is young and 8 years old, my daughter's, she's not often on the internet by herself. I will usually do the research with her or to help her and find out about things. But, Grandmama, my mom, is her trusted advisor. So she can talk to my mom and have a free flow exchange of information. And it's a safe place, And for me, that's also a safe place because I know that my mom supports me in no matter what I do, just like I support my daughter in no matter what she does. She feels fully self-expressed in that painting. And that's what makes it interesting, and that's what makes it beautiful. It's not because it's symmetrical. It's not because the brush strokes are perfect. It's not that, perfection of color theory has been applied. It has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that she looked at that canvas, she chose the colors herself, and she felt completely that was an expression of herself and of something that she wanted to give to my mom, and I think if we can take part of that spirit when we're approaching something new, it's very much, that's how I feel about it as well, is that you have to be able to forgive yourself when things don't go as planned, they don't go quickly as you would like, or that there might be a break or a delay in learning. I tend to reach out to communities of people. Like I reached out to you on the Global Multipods, or on the Multipotentialites website, when I really identified with that group of people and realized that, okay, it's actually normal to be interested in 50 million different things in your life. And not just that, but that you become proficient at many, many different areas, and that you are not losing something by becoming proficient in a new area, that you're only gaining, and that you're compounding the knowledge that you already have, and that you're choosing to do so because it's a passion and it's something that you're interested in. So, so it's really, it's kind of a fascinating process, I think, for people that are in that headspace, right?
Yeah, and also I think I occasionally I do self-evaluation when I get into something new. So after a while, I do self-evaluation. So I maintain an Excel sheet. So so out of 10, I secretly rate myself. Out of 10, I give 2 points. So next time it is 3. So similarly, I cross-check with my colleagues and people who guide me as mentors. So I check with them, are you how you feel like I'm improving on my work, or I'm yet to learn these things. What do you think of my skills in this area? So once they just casually have a chat with me, you need to do work on this more. So someone told me once, I remember, he told me you have to be very good in the public speaking domain. So I knew I lacked those skills, but okay, over the time I started interacting with people online and others, and I started improving on it. So I'm sure I have, if he had rated me on at scale of 2 or 3 at that point in time, which is 2 years ago, now he would definitely at least rate me 6 or 7. So I'm confident in myself, and then gives me a motivation. And I was listening to a TED talk where they says it releases a dopamine in your mind, that's chemical that motivates you, and then that encourages you to achieve more and more. So it is there, it is got something created in yourself that helps, that pushes you from within. And then if you do some quick tool, you use the resources like YouTube or TED talk, or a tool like this, or self-evaluation or 360-degree evaluation, I'm sure people will improve. Anyone can improve anywhere. Even sometimes I never thought about launching a website, but I had no idea about the WordPress software or the Drupal and how coding works. But then from the YouTube, I just took those script notes and copy pasted. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work, sometimes it messed up. Other times, okay, this is how I might have done. So make this change, and it's all common sense. What I realize, it's all common sense, nothing more than that. So if anyone, I would say there are obviously this high IQ sometimes which is required to do very high, great things in the life, but to achieve normal things, I don't think so. We need very high IQ, just EQ and a little bit of common sense, and then one step at a time. So this is my personal approach that was.
Well, and the conversation about IQ is always an interesting one, because you find people who you look at them and you just know by their way of being in life, that there's like genius level IQ going in there. I have a few people that are in my life that people that I've worked with in the past, people that I currently have in my life now. There is so much going on upstairs that sometimes it's almost to their detriment, because there's other parts that kind of suffer. I mean, there was a gentleman that I worked with for some time, and he was brilliant, but his thought process went so fast that his brain would skip words. So So when he would
Oh
be
my God.
typing things out, he would type out emails that he would actually be missing words. So the sentence, unless you had context around it, a lot of the time was incomprehensible. If he was if he was trying to get something out really quickly. So I mean, at that point, I was his right hand in the company, and I used to proofread almost all of his communications because he was truly brilliant, very, very gifted coder. And so when his brain was really deep into a project, I could see how the communication, the nonverbal
It
stuff,
gets affected, yeah.
absolutely. I mean, he was dedicating so much brain power to the project that he had, and he was, constantly rebuilding and constructing in his mind. And, so it was very interesting. But I have a number of people that are like that, where you have to be on your toes and you have to be ready to jump. It's like little islands in the conversation. And you have to be ready to just let go of what you were talking about 30 seconds ago and be ready to jump on to the next thing and then circle back to it an hour later and still be on top of the conversation. So, I find people like that they're fascinating. And those are the people where you can see it's like the mad scientist or, the genius that comes out when they really start talking about what they're passionate about in that moment. So IQ is something that, I still think that it's subjective and that it's something that can be trained. Because if you look at a lot of IQ tests, especially the free ones over the years, I've done a ton of them just for fun, right? And it's always interesting because I go, well, I wonder if I would score the same today that I did a year ago. So I'll often go and redo it just because I find the questions very interesting and that they make my brain work a little bit harder. And usually I still score about the same, and we're not going to talk about scores. But anyway, so I usually score a little about the same or slightly higher. But the questions that are in those tests are very much like what you would find in an LSAT. So the preparatory exam that people have to take for going to law school in North America, let's say. There's also the MCATs. Those are the ones for people entering medicine, where for the most part, there is some specific knowledge. They want to know that your brain is apt to thinking in a certain process. But a lot of it, they're logic tests. And there's usually a plausible solution to each one of the questions. Sometimes there is a definite answer, and sometimes there is just the best answer. There isn't a right answer. And so it's people's ability to think in the sense that it may not be right, but this is the best one that I can determine. And that's how people can actually study for those kinds of tests, and that they can excel and have really good scores, because there are some universities here that they look at the LSAT score for someone who's trying to get into law school. And, if your LSAT scores get compounded. So for people who may have taken it the first time, they didn't do very well. They go the next time, that first score gets blended with the new score. It's not just that you get the highest one that, if you performed better, and those scores are actually tracked for a certain period of time. So it's almost like demerits on a driver's license. They stay with you. So for people who are going to take those kinds of performance tests, it can be very difficult. Like, I know someone who she was doing the LSATs, and she had written her LSAT, and she was considering going to law school in Canada. And she had written it a number of years before. She hadn't really prepared, but then a few years later, she became really interested in doing a law degree. And she looked at me and she said, it's not that my score was terrible the first time, but because it's there, no matter how well I do on this one, it's a blended score. It's an average of the two. So it'll bring my score down. But then you go somewhere like the UK. The UK doesn't use the LSAT. They will take people directly out of high school. I actually was approved to go to law school in the UK because I was going to do a distance learning program. And I thought it was fascinating. They just wanted your high school records. They wanted to see if you'd done any post-secondary, which at that point I already had. And they just, they want to know that you're competent. They want to know that you have a brain. and that they will teach you the rest. They will develop you the rest of the way. So, and I kind of like that because that's a little bit more like the multi-potentialite thinking, right?
Yeah, true. And if you want to switch the fields, switch the areas, they would again welcome. Okay, now you've changed your mind, so welcome. The same as in India, but India is like more like a survival kind of environment here, where parents take the decisions for you. So that is the different approach. But it works for someone. It worked for my sister. So my father always wanted my sister to do law. She did law, and then she started practicing. And then after 2 years, she thought that she would appear for the civil services examination, and she appeared for two different exams in for two different provinces, and she cleared both of them with the first rank. I would say I thought first rank in one of them and the second rank in another. And now she's a senior judge, senior divisional judge, and she had whole district.
Wow.
A lot of offices fall under her jurisdiction, and a lot of police stations come under her jurisdiction. And she's posted in one of the biggest district in North India. And sometimes it works for them. But I mean, I asked her, was she clear of her this career when she was in doing her graduation? She says, no, my father gave me the visualization and that worked for her. And then she, without any coaching, she was able to clear both the exams in the very first attempt. And she was appointed as a junior judge. And after every 2-3 years, she gets promoted to a senior judge. And now she's the head of the district. So it's wonderful. So, but again, it has a lot of things involved in it. She was interested in law, and but she never thought to be a judge. She liked when I asked her what drives her. So she says when she sits on her dice on the chair, so immediately that intuition, that intuitive brain just lightens up, and then she could connect the what we call sections in different sections in the law, and this is how she just gets on the judgments. She decides the judgments immediately. So in a day where a normal person would do 5-7 judgments, after analyzing it, she would do 30-40. She said she could immediately connect the different cases, the evidences in the different cases, and she would do the judgments within like hour, several judgments in an hour, which was surprising. It comes naturally to her. That's wonderful so far.
Well, and that's absolutely amazing. And but it also goes to show when you have someone who has really developed an incredible proficiency and that they're doing what they should be doing in life at that point in time. It's absolutely fascinating because they excel at a level that other people can only dream of.
Perfect.
Yeah, and also what I find really cool about that is that I've worked with people that were far faster, far more proficient as far as how quickly they could perform work. I always knew that, whatever I was doing, I always wanted it to be the best. Okay, yes, I understand there's a little touch of perfectionism, and I've really worked hard over the years to let that go, because there is no such thing as perfect. And people really need to embrace the fact that whatever it is that you're doing, that is perfect.
Yes.
It may not be exactly the perfect result. It may not be exactly right the very first time that you do it. But as you continue to throw yourself down the rabbit hole, you will get to a point where you've actually had a progression, as we were saying. Your sister sounds like she is a remarkable judge, remarkable human being. And that if she's able to, because that's one thing where most countries, the court system is so congested. And if she is delivering fair judgment, and that she is really able to process the information, and obviously being a senior judge in the courts, she's been recognized for that. People acknowledge the fact that she is very good at what she does. So
perfect. But when it comes to something which is not related to court or the judge, she would call me up. Hi, OJ, can you tell me how this works in the internet? How this technology works? What is good for in the business? So she would call me and say, now you realize how multi-potentialites can add value. Be good at your dice, let me help you in this way. You are not good, no good at this, doing this thing. So here is mix and match, and this is what organizations have need to focus on. And another thing
Mm-hmm.
which I was thinking is, I'll just skip from my mind. Yeah, just go ahead. I just missed my point, so that's okay. I just
Well, I guess the next part of our segment that I sort of wanted to get to today was, we've talked a lot about who we talk to, where do we go first, who are our trusted people. I think that that's come out
yeah,
abundantly, which I think is wonderful, because
yeah,
we both clearly have people that are in our lives who support us exactly as we are, for who we are, and that see that no matter what it is that we're up to, that we will find the success within ourselves.
yeah,
But the
yeah.
other thing that I was going to say is, okay, so let's talk about some of those resources that are out there on, on the BLAG tubes, the World Wide Web, the internet, whatever it is that you want to call it. I often joke around with my friends and I call them the BLAG tubes or the interwebs, right? And sometimes it's the broken net when things aren't working.
Or it is maybe the dark net. Huh? Nowadays,
Yeah.
getting popular dark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, I know I'll start with a couple of places where I go first. And I know that I'm not the only one. This is not unique to me because this is why these sites are around. But I know that when I was doing a lot of research and that I was doing technical writing for a law firm for scientific research and experimental development tax claims, and I was preparing all of the technical data after I had interviewed the scientific bodies or the science, whether they were the engineers or the inventor or whatever it was. I would have this massive, massive amount of information to go to. So if it was a new area for me, if it was something like, let's say, plastics or machining, or let's say we were going to be talking about a particular type of controls for an aircraft in aviation, I would go, and the first place I would always go is Wikipedia.
That
And
automatically comes up through in your search on the top. And it's wonderful. But
yeah,
Wikipedia works for almost everyone. Even how people say that it won't work if the information is not authentic, but yet you will get a lot. Now you have to decide, you have to take it or leave it. You get a lot of external references which will take to another website, and then those ones are at least authentic. So Wikipedia is like next to Google. So Wikipedia is like heart of Google nowadays.
yeah. Well, and I think that I see a giant no from Ryan. Ryan, don't panic. It's okay. Because this is
Okay.
where the journey starts. Because
Yes.
I guess the important thing is that any information you get on the internet, and this is part of, the critical thinking and the problem solving skills, is that it's a good jumping off point, because then what you do is you take the information and you validate it. Right? You
Correct. You
go and you
validate.
look at yeah, exactly. You look at the resources that were quoted, you go and see what studies were cited, you go and see, is this something that's fairly common? And the nice thing about Wikipedia is that it's in layman's terms. So you can start from
Yes.
there, and then you can start drilling down on some key specific words, and you can go and research those separately. And especially when you're dealing with areas that it's proprietary knowledge, that there is, there's trade secrets involved, you are kind of reliant upon the public domain to start somewhere. And then after that, I mean, lucky for me, I know people that are working in aviation. I know lots of engineers. I have a ton of people that I can talk to, and that I can take that base level of knowledge, and then I can validate it against, okay, so we're talking about avionics. Let's talk about this particular, they decided to go with that brand. Why did they decide to go with that brand? And then you start having the conversation about, well, they're usually first and best in the field. They're the ones that do the most testing, for whatever reasons. So I don't take Wikipedia as the authoritative voice of all of the research, but it's a really great place to start seeing how things are linked together and what scientific theories are linked to that particular area of study. And because the knowledge that I needed to gain was so wide, it was very vast, you needed to have a little bit of expertise. And thankfully, just because of all of the different things I've done in my life, I'm very mechanically inclined. I understand a lot of theories behind how things work. I did industrial arts when I was in school, and I loved it, because I wanted to do things with my hands. I've done silversmithing, so I've worked with fire, and that you take the little bits of knowledge, and that's how they all start coming together. When I was studying for my dive master, we actually studied physics for things like lift bags. And it's from some of that knowledge that I had that when I later started doing technical writing, I was like, oh, I can just take that little bit and I'll apply it, because it's relatable. It's something that is, it's not exactly the same, but it's a parallel theory, I guess. So then, that's always my word to anybody when they're starting to do, something new. And it's like, okay, you can go on to the Google, you can go on to the interwebs, and whatever site you end up on, make sure that you validate. I think that's probably my biggest point. And I talk to the Google daily about things. Sometimes I end up on very geeky websites like TechCrunch, Tech Republic. I love reading reviews on if I'm doing some kind of consumer product research. I love reading other people's reviews, and then you don't necessarily take that review at face value, because you have to take, okay, well, what perspective are they looking at something? Like, for example, when I was researching microphones and Blue Yeti, love my Blue Yeti, it's amazing. Still need to get a shock mount for it, but still. When I was researching microphones, I was looking at what people use for vocals, what people use for podcasting, what people use for interviews. I wasn't looking at someone who is doing a session recording, with session musicians, where you need to have, like an omnipresent sort of 360 recording. This microphone is capable of doing that. However, that's not what I was researching. But when I started looking at, okay, well, yes, I do want something that is going to be great for vocals, not just for capturing audio for spoken conversation, or if I'm going to be doing an interview, there is actually, it's a very versatile mic because it's got 5 different audio patterns that it will capture. But it was looking at it for, these are my purposes. These are the things I needed to be able to do, and this is my budget. And, Blue Yeti, as well as a couple of the other ones, there's some Shure microphones that are outstanding. They were a little bit more than what I wanted to spend, because this whole working with BLAB, working in the video platform, working with any of this is also part of a giant experiment that we've got going on. Right? And I love it.
And good thing about Wikipedia that I've read that it's sometimes on the controversial topics or things, it sometimes presents the viewpoints of both the sides. Some people say this, some people say this, and then they leave it open, which is the best thing. They will never be biased opinions in Wikipedia, and how they do it is amazing. They might have a strong team of researchers and analysts and who are there. And once upon a time, I just updated Multipotentiality page with something, and then they immediately replied me back, some John with the name John. They said, okay, this is not acceptable. We should do this way. If you do this way, it will be more authentic. And then they accepted it. So at a personal level, they interact with you, and then they make sure that the information which comes from the normal people like us and has some logic around it and some evidence elsewhere, so that I can refer back, and people who are reading it do not get interpreted or they do not get incomplete information. And this is wonderful. Wikipedia, I would say that it's wonderful because they have started. They make their best effort to keep any information which is there is updated. For example, the last year's balance sheet of another company, maybe any company that will put Honda or Suzuki, they will update with the last year's. And those are directly linked to their quarterly reviews. When you cross check, the figures are exactly the same. And then I use a lot of Wikipedia data into my daily research. And I just now started relying over Wikipedia. Earlier, I used to hesitate from it. But now I think it's a wonderful resource. And for other industry, for example, music industry or about cricket, they would give the history, step by step history, what happened when, last 100 years or last 50 years. So that gives you an idea how the things evolved. So then you can obviously get a pattern that where the things will head up to. So what things, new things are coming. And I think this is a wonderful resource. So what other resource I would like to know from you that you're using?
Yeah, I have to say that another one, and this is kind of a guilty pleasure for me, is YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube has tutorials on everything from how to properly prune your bamboo to how to get your darn lawnmower started that is sitting in your garage that won't start. It's that is another very, very broad base, and
Yeah.
I take the same approach. I think that your approach to how you do your research is going to determine the level of accuracy and success that you're going to have. So usually if I'm looking for something and I end up on YouTube, like let's say it's because I want to do something artistic or crafty, or it really doesn't matter. I will usually watch at least 3 tutorials to see if it's consistent information.
Yes,
And
this is very important.
yeah, it's the same approach that I take to anything I find on Google or on Wikipedia, for example, is that I will always, I'll look at it, I'll say, okay, so is that the best way that I can do something? So, I mean, YouTube is brilliant because of all of the keyword tags that people can put in. So usually there are some suggested ones, but then often I'll actually go back to YouTube and I'll put in my keyword search and see which results are coming up. And I don't always go by the results on the first page. Sometimes I'll actually, no, that doesn't seem like it's quite right. I'll go 2 or 3 pages deep, which you don't see a lot of people doing that anymore because it's that instant gratification. Google gave me an answer. Yay. It's not always. Sometimes especially if it's a very specific area of knowledge and that you're looking for something, that missing link, that little key to your puzzle, those are often not on the first page of search results because the ones that show up the most are the ones that are at kind of the basic level. Again, depending on the keyword search that you're using and how specific you are. And I mean, Google has come a long way over the years where it's using Boolean searches kind of natively. You don't really have to use quotes and pluses. It is useful though to know, and I don't know if this is something you know or not, but when you are searching in Google and you keep hitting search results that are not relevant, what you can do is you can actually encapsulate your search string in quotes, and then you can put a minus or a minus for that particular keyword that keeps coming up. There aren't a ton of people that are non-technical that know that, but I know that that's something that has years and years ago, you actually had to enter your search string in quotes to get the specific results that you wanted. And you had to use the more or the less, so the plus or the minus, if you wanted to see more or less of that particular result. But it still works. It still works. And it's really great at filtering out when you keep getting garbage, So it's, I guess, another area of my life that I'm really passionate about is writing food reviews and blogging about food. And that, that's apparent with the cookbook. It's apparent in the fact that I've been on Yelp which is a community social platform where people do peer reviews of all kinds of businesses. I've been on Yelp since 2008, and I've been elite for the last 3 years with them. And it's fantastic because I don't always look at just the good results. You look at some of the bad results. You also have to look at, okay, that person, are they new? Is it someone who maybe has a bone to pick? And you have to take it with a grain of salt. Yelp works very, very hard at making sure that there aren't paid promotional placements, and that it's not the businesses themselves that are writing it. So you start developing this circle of trust within Yelp. You start building friendships with people that are other Yelpers that have been on there, people that have received things like review of the day. They've been featured in the weekly Yelp. They've been featured in the local Yelp, so for your community, is that person being recognized? Is that person being validated by the community manager? So there is actually a physical being. There's a person who lives here in Calgary who goes through, and that's his job, is to moderate reviews, to acknowledge those who have been excelling in the community, and to recognize them, and also creating community events so that people that are part of the Yelp community can actually get together and celebrate together and explore something new. So I know that that's something that, because I've had that journey with Yelp already, I've been, I regularly get review of the day, and it's not always for something I just reviewed. Sometimes it's something I reviewed 6 months ago, but that, the moderator is looking for, or the community manager is looking for something relevant for that edition of the weekly Yelp where he's featuring, burgers or sushi or whatever. So when you start seeing, you're getting review of the day because things are, you're writing reviews that are full and that they have detail, and that you're also praising, not that some of the less praising reviews don't get review of the day. Sometimes they do, even if you're only giving, a 3-star to somebody as opposed to a 5-star. But that's where I started learning that, those are who my trusted resources are when I'm looking for something new, whether it's a place to get my dog groomed, whether it's a place that's going to help me move my furniture, whether I'm planning a party as I am for next month. And I start going through and I do my research and I look at who is writing those reviews. And it's important to know that there's some places where you have that transparency, and there's other places where you don't. So you have to do a little extra legwork to validate the research.
For example, in LinkedIn, we now see the LinkedIn Pulse where people publish their articles, and then I go back to the profile of the person to know how much qualified is he and where is he coming from, and that gives me a lot of information. And I have, for last 6 months, I think I have been more interested in trying towards using LinkedIn as a source of information compared to the Facebook. I don't know how this transition came forward. Maybe Facebook has a lot of clutter now and LinkedIn is still useful compared to Facebook. So I've been transitioning from Facebook to LinkedIn, and obviously platforms which are paid and which are still have a good brand value in the market. And this is the reason. This is the reason, because of the information that they share and then they refer back is not a clutter, and that this does make sense, because when I read company published articles, and those are very good value, good professionally written, and then they have some sources which they have referred back, and then I'll always relate to it, and then it gives me a lot of information as well compared to what is published on the Facebook.
Well, and I also really value the articles that are posted on LinkedIn. It gives a really fresh or interesting perspective on something. And often I'm reading articles and I'm going, well, yeah, that very much differs from my own point of view. However, I can still integrate some parts of that knowledge based on, what my own beliefs are or what it is that I'm up to. LinkedIn is a fabulous resource for that. For business, the ones that I look to the most are Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. Magazine. Forbes on occasion has really, really great articles, and and those are ones where I look at for motivation, for what's new, what's trending. I mean, Wall Street Journal is good. I find sometimes it's a little bit dry. There are excellent white papers that can be downloaded from Harvard Business Review on subjects that are absolutely limitless. I've sat on some webinars before that Harvard Business Review does, and they're free. They're usually an hour or two. They go and they do a deep dive into a particular subject, and then you usually get a white paper or some kind of resource afterwards where you can go and continue your own exploration. So I find, but on a daily basis, it's usually Inc. and Entrepreneur. I'm a big fan of Richard Branson. He is someone who I haven't met personally, but I have a business colleague who actually worked with Richard Branson. He worked for Virgin Records. And, even as he was being laid off from the company when Virgin was streamlining their operations in Canada, that he says, Sir Richard looked at me and said, it's not personal. I really like you, but this is business. Yeah. And I know that takes a lot of integrity, because it's very difficult to say to somebody, I don't have the work, I don't have the resources, money, insert whatever term here. And, and to be able to say that to somebody and for it not to become personal on the other end. And as long as you are looking at it from the objective perspective that, it was a business decision. He was let go from a very, very lucrative position in his career. He'd worked with Sony Records. He worked with Virgin for quite some time, and had a really, these were relationships where Richard Branson would get all of his top honchos together and they would just sit and powwow on what's happening globally. So it's not that they had this distant relationship from the founder and CEO of so many different enterprises. So I really respect Richard Branson. I respect the fact that he really has gone the full distance in realizing so many of his different visions and dreams, personally and on a business level, that it's a true inspiration, because he acknowledges in some of the books that he's published where he's had failures, where he hasn't had the success, and where he's also had to scale back. So it's, I just really find that reading some of his words on leadership, on entrepreneurialism, and on or entrepreneurship, I should say, that's something that kind of keeps me going, because I see that I just have to keep failing forward, as they say, or just keep experimenting and keep doing what I'm doing. So yeah, that's a big source for me. Oh. Are we still there? Your video just froze up on me here. Oh. Onkar, it looks like we just lost you. We'll just wait to see if he calls back in. Having some technical difficulties here. That's okay. Let's just see if we've got something on Skype from him. Yeah, okay, so I think that we've got some technical difficulties that are going on the other side. So, and we are also coming to a close of our session anyhow. So I will sign off on behalf of Onkarjot Singh. Our session today, again, was about our favorite resources and the things that we use to get our deep dive into a new area kickstarted, and some of the people that inspire us along the way. So on behalf of Onkarjot Singh, who can be found at Twitter at Global Multipods, and myself, Marianne Hutchings, you can find me on Twitter at Luscious Tech. Thank you again for joining us. If you are joining us on a future broadcast, or on if you're viewing the recorded session, please feel free to reach out to us here on BLAB or also on Twitter with any questions or comments that you may have. Thanks again and have a great day, everyone.